So what I'm going to ask is my assistant, who many of you know, but the lovely Deborah is going to come up. Deborah Horton, would you give us, she's going to introduce our speaker today.
Hi there, everyone. And those of you who are here for the first time, welcome to Florida. Yay. Okay. Our first speaker this afternoon is founder, CEO, and chief scientist of Aigo.ai. He is an entrepreneur with a background in electronics, computer systems, business, and technical software. Since the early 90s, he has been researching and developing artificial general intelligence. He founded Aigo.ai Inc. with the goal of developing a commercially viable general purpose AI engine, artificial intelligence engine. He believes that integrating insights from philosophy, cognitive psychology, and the computer sciences are crucial for the rapid progress in artificial intelligence. Another passion of his is exploring optimal living, maximizing both the quantity and quality of life. Peter has authored many articles, including Calorie Poisoning, Civilization's Exploding Killer Disease, and Why Machines Will Become Hyper-Intelligent Before Humans Do. In addition to being an entrepreneur, engineer, inventor, AI pioneer, and author, Peter is well known for his talks on rational ethics, free will, and artificial minds. He is deeply involved with futurism and radical life extension. Let's give a very warm Hollywood welcome to futurist and transhumanist Peter Voss.
Thank you so much. I guess you've already told my life story. This is fantastic to be talking to a group of people who actually want to extend their lives, who are into scientific approaches. This is very unusual and it's great, it's fantastic. Several people asked me over the last few days with the conference that we're in about how I got into artificial intelligence, how I got into transhumanism. So I've made this talk a little bit more personal and giving my personal history. I'll also be talking about technology. Some parts will get pretty technical, and then I'll talk about sort of the future, the vision of things. Just my background, my family moved to South Africa when I was quite young. I had an unusual way of getting into artificial intelligence in that I didn't actually finish high school. Family circumstances, I had to start working at 16. I got involved in electronics, which fascinated me, and I started an electronics company. Then I fell in love with software, and my electronics company turned into a software company. And this is, I'm the guy with the hair there. That's our first 3 employees when we started. The company did really well. We grew very quickly, and we actually grew to 400 people within a few years and did an IPO. So then that's me with the board of directors there a few years later. I was a lot older then, you can see. So, that's sort of the early history, the first chapter of my life, as it were. And then I moved to America in '95, and that was fantastic, a fantastic experience. I mean, as much as I loved my life in South Africa and all the experience I had here, America was just a whole different story. And I was extremely fortunate to be introduced to Max Moore, who founded the Extropy Institute and the philosophy of extropy. And that's all about, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's all about overcoming human limits, but using rationality and taking personal responsibility for yourself, for your actions, and for what you do and who you become, and that was really very appealing to me. And very rapidly, I got introduced to. Actually, yeah, I just want to mention this. Check out the Letter to Mother Nature: Amendments to the Human Constitution by Max Moore. It's a fantastic little article about us taking charge of improving ourselves. But I was introduced to a great number of new for me at that level of technologies and nanotechnology. I met Eric Drexler and the Foresight Institute, and that was fantastic. Met Roy Walford, learned all about calorie restriction. That was amazing. I learned about cryonics. I'd never really found out about it. I met all the people at Alcor and got involved with that. Whole new insights into philosophy in different areas. I was like a kid in a candy store with all these new exciting philosophies and things that I got involved with. With Alcor, once I found out about it, I did my research and really came to the conclusion that, the only thing I had to decide, is this impossible? Cryonics? Is it impossible for cryonics to work? Is there anything in science that we know that makes it impossible? And the answer was no. There doesn't seem to be anything that makes it impossible. So it's possible. It's possible that it'll work and we can come back in the future. And then the second thing I had to do, is this some kind of a California scam? Some ripoff or so. And I met the people at Alcor, and it became very apparent these are very dedicated people who are dedicated to making this work, who are giving up their lives and potentially good careers and salaries to make Cryonics work. So to me, it was a no-brainer to sign up for Cryonics. And in fact, I got more deeply involved with Cryonics. I ended up actually running the Southern California emergency rescue team of about between 8 and 10 people, that we would give immediate response if somebody died in the Los Angeles area. We would quickly respond to them and apply medication and cool down and make sure that they got to Alcor as quickly as possible. So that was my involvement in these many different kind of new exciting technologies and things. And of course AI was another big one that I had already been studying. So I asked myself then, why radical life extension? People often ask me that, and the simple answer is I love life. I think hopefully everybody in here in this room loves life, so you want more of it. But there's sort of another angle of it. As I was growing older, I realized this is really this is nuts. Just when we get the hang of life, we've been married a few times, we've raised a few kids, we've had a few bankruptcies, and okay, I haven't had all of those, but you get, just when we're starting to get the hang of life, we die. I mean, that makes no sense. Really, it doesn't, So we want to extend life. We need more life. And we need a quality of life. We want the quantity, but we also want the quality of life. We want optimal living. And, I do calorie restriction. I've been doing calorie restriction for the last 20 years to hopefully extend my life, my healthy lifespan, long enough to be able to benefit from the future technologies that'll extend it even more. So I do everything possible, cryonics and CR and so on, to extend my life. And then I have motorcycles in my veins somehow, so I don't know how I rationalize it. That, by the way, is in South Africa, in snow, in Lesotho. And that's last year on my motorcycle. So I don't know how I reconcile that, but I just thought that I haven't managed total rationality yet. So let me switch over to talk about artificial intelligence and how I see it helping us achieving radical life extension. And that's the mission I've been on for the last 20 years. I spent several years studying intelligence. First of all, before studying artificial intelligence, I spent a lot of time studying intelligence itself. What is intelligence? How is human intelligence different from, or unique? How is it different from animals? How do people learn? How do children learn? What are IQ tests about? What do they actually measure? So to really deeply understand cognition and intelligence, I saw that as a prerequisite for building artificial intelligence. So I spent about 5 years studying, all these different aspects, even going back to philosophy and epistemology, the theory of knowledge. How do we know anything? What is reality? How do we have certainty? What is free will? All of those kind of things play into understanding what cognition is, what consciousness is, and how all of these things play together to be able to build an artificial thinking machine. And I see this helping us with our life extension efforts in many ways, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, in terms of being able to have PhD-level researchers, artificial researchers, that can help us crack these really difficult problems of reversing aging and reversible cryonics and so on. So in 2001, I got together with 2 other people, and we actually coined the term artificial general intelligence, and the reason, or AGI. And that's now quite a well-accepted term, so that's quite nice to see. And the reason we coined that term is because AI had lost its way. The original dream of artificial intelligence from when the original term was coined in 60 years ago was to build a thinking machine, a machine that can think and learn and reason the way humans do. That was the original idea. But that turned out to be really, really hard. So over the decades, what happened is AI became narrow AI. It's trying to solve just one particular problem at a time, like playing chess or optimizing container packing or traffic control or whatever. And that's a very different kind of approach. It's not really intelligence or it's not intelligence in the machine. It's taking the designers, the programmers' intelligence and turning it into code. So it's the external intelligence that's been turned into computer code. And then that gives us some useful things and some interesting things like chess playing machines and so on. But it's not real intelligence. Intelligence is about the ability to be able to learn interactively, to understand, to be able to reason, and most importantly, to be able to learn to solve different problems. We have general intelligence as human beings. And that's really what we need in AI for it to be successful. Now, there's sort of the term that I've coined, the narrow AI trap. And the problem is when you try to build an AGI, a general intelligence, it's very hard. It's a very hard problem. And if you have a particular customer or a particular application, that some particular problem you want to solve, it's always quicker, or up to now, it has been quicker and cheaper and easier to do it with narrow AI approaches. To basically, instead of the machine learning how to do something, the programmer figures it out and turns it into code. So in the attempts of people trying to build AGI in the past, as I say, commercial pressures, short-term pressures, or lack of understanding of intelligence have always sort of pushed it back into a narrow AI realm. And this is really the mission that I've been on to steadfastly continue on the AGI path for us to achieve this. In 2001, I also started my first AGI company. I hired about 12 people. I was fortunate enough that from the company in South Africa that I had that listed on the stock exchange, I had enough sort of time and money to be able to pursue this. And so I hired a team of about 12 people, and for several years we just built various prototypes, did a lot of experimentation, and then by 2008 I started a company called SmartAction. And what SmartAction does is, you'll all be able to relate to this, is when you call into a company and you talk to a computer, you hate it. And you just press 0 to get to an operator, because these systems are terrible. They're narrow AI that really are not a good experience. So what SmartAction does is we are using our AGI engine, our early prototype AGI engine, to give a much better experience. So you can actually speak in normal English to the system, and it'll be able to understand you. It'll remember what you said earlier on in the conversation. So it's just much better. Not yet at human level, but it's much better. And SmartAction has been quite successful at now about 100 people. We have clients like AAA. If you break down the side of the road, chances are it'll be our first generation Aigo that will help you get going again. The Bellagio Hotel in Vegas uses it for customer support and so on. However, SmartAction also fell into the narrow AI trap fairly quickly because tremendous commercial pressure, so we didn't actually make the system smarter and smarter. It was smart enough to do the things that it needed to do, and we got bogged down basically by dealing with things like scalability, security, backup, HIPAA compliance, and all of those kinds of things, and we did very little work to actually make it smarter. So 5 years ago, I exited SmartAction and started Aigo.ai, and hired again a new team of people, 12 people, a brilliant crew that I have together there. And for the last 5 years, we've been in stealth mode. No customers, no commercial pressure, just working on cranking up the intelligence of our system to get closer and closer to human. Fortunately, we're still a long way away from human level intelligence, but we're getting there, getting closer. So the problem that you have in current conversational AI, that's the focus we have, basically having systems you can talk to that understand you. The problem that you have with the current crop of conversational AI, or chatbots as they're called, is they really are quite dumb. They don't remember what you said 2 sentences ago, never mind what you said last week. So they have no memory, no, they don't remember. They can't learn interactively, sort of, random things they weren't specifically programmed for. So if I say to Siri or Alexa, my sister moved to Oregon, or something like that, they don't know what to do with it. They can't actually learn something as simple as that. And they don't have deep understanding. It's very shallow. It's just a statistical kind of pattern matching. So literally, if you say, I hate Uber, don't ever give me Uber again, sure enough, the Uber app will pop up because it, heard the word Uber. So there isn't deep understanding. It's just like pattern matching. They can't reason, no common sense. So they'll take whatever without pushing back and saying, hey, did I understand you correctly? This doesn't make sense, or whatever. No, they can't do that. So you really cannot have a real ongoing, meaningful conversation with them. And they can't be personalized to you. So it's pretty severe restriction. And these restrictions are inherent in the technology that these big companies all use. This is across the board. This is Amazon, this is Google, this is IBM, Watson. They're all using the wrong approach, basically the narrow AI approach that doesn't have any intelligence. So here's an example.
All right. Alexa, add chips and guac, napkins, and 3 bottles of wine to John's birthday list.
I added chips, guac, napkins, 3 bottles of wine to your shopping list.
Actually, Alexa, remove the napkins from the list.
To clear your list or remove an item, visit the Alexa app.
Okay, then. Alexa, what do I have on John's birthday list?
You have 1 item on your shopping list. Chips, guac, napkins, 3 bottles of wine.
You call all that one item? Oh, Alexa, remember that John's favorite cake is red velvet.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Right. So you can see, and these limitations are inherent, and this is in spite of the fact that Amazon employs 10,000 people to work on Alexa. 10,000 people. So, they may have 20,000 skills, but the skills are all trivial, stupid, So, it doesn't understand what list you're talking about. It doesn't understand what items you're talking about. Therefore, you can't edit the items and can't remember simple things like, what John's favorite cake is. So here I'll show you our Aigo AI engine hooked up to the Alexa microphone and speaker, so sort of a similar situation.
All right, let's make this happen. Aigo,
Hi there. What's on your mind?
let's add chips and guac, napkins, and 3 bottles of wine to John's birthday list.
Good morning, Sam. I don't know what guac is.
Oh, guac is the same thing as guacamole.
Okay, creating John's birthday list. Is that okay?
Yep.
I added chips and guacamole, napkins, and 3 bottles of wine to John's birthday list.
What was the food on that list again?
Chips and guacamole and 3 bottles of wine.
Actually, let's make that 5 bottles.
Sure. The list is now 5 bottles of wine, chips and guacamole, and napkins.
Great, let's send it over to June. And ask her if there's anything I'm missing, please.
Sending John's birthday list to June via email.
Wait, always contact June by Skype.
Okay, sending the list to June via Skype.
Oh, remember that John's favorite cake is red velvet.
Got it.
Fantastic.
Okay, I will tell Aigo that you appreciate it. Thank you. You can see this is a very different experience of what's possible with having some intelligence there in the background. It can, if it doesn't understand something, it'll ask, what is guac? Guac's name is guacamole. It'll now remember that, so it's personalized to you. It understands your slang. And it can reason about things. What are the food items on the list? And use context and reasoning to say, make that 5 bottles. Well, obviously, those are the bottles you're talking about. And then learn random but maybe important things like, always contact her by Skype, or favorite cake is red velvet. So this is where we are. As I say, we didn't show you the blooper reel. This is, showing you all the things that Aigo can do, not the things that Aigo can't do. We're still a long way from human level intelligence, but we have an approach that allows us to get smarter and smarter and to get to human level intelligence. So what is human level intelligence? I mentioned earlier, I think I've already kind of covered that. It's the ability to learn, to be able to adapt to different circumstances, to learn different things, how to cope with different situations, how to learn to solve different kinds of problems. We are, generalists as humans, rather than being specialized to some narrow domain as animals tend to be. So what our approach is, how our approach is different is from the mainstream. This is where it gets, I'm going to get a bit more technical in terms of how what we're doing differs from what mainstream AI is doing. DARPA recently, about a year ago or so, published a report talking about the 3rd wave of AI. And what they mean by that is the first wave of AI is basically all the stuff that was done for decades in AI. That's basically logic systems, flow charting type of arrangements, statistical approaches, and basically all of the early stuff that was done in AI, expert systems and things like that. So the early chess playing computers would be essentially first wave of AI. And it's become very clear that conversational AI, to have a conversational agent, you can't do with that. I mean, there are just too many ways a conversation go. So then 6 or 7 years ago, the 2nd wave hit like a tsunami. And that's basically what everybody's busy with now, and billions of dollars are flowing into that. And this is called machine learning, deep learning, by different names. It's all to do with big data. So instead of having to program the computer to tell it exactly step by step what it needs to do, you can just give it a lot of data, and it can kind of learn by itself just from the data. So it's like magic. And this is incredibly powerful. It's been able to make very big advances in, for example, speech recognition itself, in translation, in image recognition, and unfortunately also in targeted advertising. And this is one of the reasons why billions of dollars are going into this, because it more effectively can categorize people. So these companies have a lot of data, they can have a lot of computing power, they can number crunch that and build statistical models that'll basically predict more accurately what ad you might click on. So there's a lot of money flowing into it. It's also helping with sort of self-driving cars, making that more viable. So this is a really big deal, the second wave. But it has severe limitations. Again, it can't learn interactively. It can't reason. You're basically taking a lot of data, number crunching it, and you're building a model from that, a statistical model of what does the average person mean, or what does the average person want. It cannot be individualized. It cannot learn interactively. And this is why these systems, his favorite cake is red velvet. Well, most people's favorite cake maybe isn't red velvet, So that kind of thing. So these limitations are actually quite well known now, to the extent that the godfather of deep learning, Jeff Hinton, a year or so ago said, "My view is to throw it all away and start over." That's how frustrated and disgusted he is with the limitations of deep learning. In spite of all the successes that have had, and he's now trying a different approach. And the head of Google's DeepMind, it's the fantastic success they've had in beating the world champion in Go. I mean, it's a significant achievement to do that. But even he, just a few months ago, said deep learning is an amazing technology, but definitely not enough to solve AI, not by a long shot. So the limitations are recognized, but it seems that the AI field has so much money has gone into it, it becomes a sort of self-perpetuating thing. There's specialized hardware being built, a whole generation of AI scientists that are coming into the field. That's the only thing they learn. In fact, I have a particular story to tell about that. I had a brilliant intern from Germany work for me, and he left to go back to Germany to do his PhD. Now he was totally on board with AGI. He totally got it. That's what he wanted to dedicate his life to building AGI. He couldn't find a sponsor for his PhD, so he had to do machine learning. It's really the success of machine learning has sucked all of the oxygen out of the air. For any other approaches, but the limitations are not severe enough yet that people are sort of giving up on deep learning. So the third wave, what DARPA is talking about, is really something that works more the way our brain does, a cognitive architecture, that it's inherently designed to be able to understand, to learn, to reason, to have memory and all of that in a highly integrated way. So that you start off by saying, what does intelligence require? And you then build a system around that, not how can we optimize our advertising, or how can we optimize some particular narrow problem. You really start with and have to stick with saying, what does intelligence require? And that's the third wave approach. And this is what I figured out some 20 years ago when I did my initial research, and we've basically been building, improving, perfecting, and commercializing this approach, this intelligence engine, this cognitive architecture. And this is what allows us to have much deeper understanding, to have memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, context, to be able to reason, to be able to clarify things, to have a real conversation, and to have personalization. I'll give you just one example, again, to sort of highlight the difference, and it's really quite startling. If I said just 6 words to a 5-year-old child, my sister's cat, Spock, is pregnant, very simple sentence. A 5-year-old child would understand that I'm speaking, Peter speaking, I have a sister, my sister has a cat, the cat's name is Spock. You would think it's probably a male, and then you hear it's pregnant, I know it's female. We just take that for granted. A child can understand that. None of the current AIs come anywhere near being able to handle that, And the next sentence might be, she's really big, because she's pregnant, or next week you might come back and say, have the kittens arrived, and you could make sense of that. We take that for granted. You need a cognitive architecture type of approach to be able to handle, just common sense, obvious things like that. I'll skip past sort of some of the other more subtle things. Tom almost sent those email to his newest employee, Paul, it kind of makes a difference whether he almost sent the email or whether he actually sent them. So statistically, if you just kind of look at the words, and well, you probably think he sent the email. And you also got some new piece of information there to his newest employee, Paul. So you now know who Paul is, and you shouldn't have to ask again. Let me, I have a bit of time. So the differences are so stark. It's like chalk and cheese and different approaches. We don't need massive amounts of data. It's not the quantity of data, it's the quality of data that counts. It's being able to learn interactively in real time. It's not a black box that we can't understand. And really the difference is so stark that what mainstream AI is working on, it's like they're trying to improve candles while what you really need is a light bulb, and it doesn't matter how much money you put into building fancier or bigger candles, you're not going to get to the light bulb. But with a light bulb, the early light bulbs, you might have to compete with a light bulb that's not that bright or reliable yet, You have to get past that threshold. Here's another way, and I certainly share those slides with any of you who are interested in this, and I think there's a recording. But it's, on 4 different dimensions. If you say, if you're measuring something by the number of skills that it has, like Alexa has, I think like 80,000 skills or something, but nobody remembers what they are. They're trivial, they're useless, People use it to, okay, play that song for me, or remind me in 5 minutes to check the, whatever. So it's really how much intelligence is there that can be reused. So if you're using one skill, what you learn there, can that be used by another skill? So that's the reusability of it. Then the cognitive depth. How deep is the understanding? Is it very shallow? Is it just statistical? Is there reasoning, and so on? And then the 4th dimension I show here is personalization. Can it be personalized to you? With Alexa and Siri and Google and all of those things, it's basically the same program for everyone. It's not personalized at all. So that's what we're working on. Let me go forward on it. So let me talk a little bit about, again, coming back to why we want AGI and the benefits I believe it will provide. So having more intelligent systems, having real AI, there's tremendous demand. As we've been talking to potential customers, it's for a gaming coach that'll help you be a better game player. We have interest from gaming companies, Now that might not be that important, but then you have medical applications where you want a personalized coach to help you deal with your medical situation, that can help you make recommendations, that can coach you and keep you on the right path and so on. That's something I'm very excited about. Education, tremendous opportunities in highly personalized education, that it can be, the system can be designed to really deal with each individual student, of the pace of learning that they have, what they already know, what they're interested in, and so on. Robotics, if you have a robot in a hospital or hotel, you want to be able to talk to it and so on. So many, many different applications for that. And really the field, the comparison of first, second, and third wave is, if the original AI could, that little red dot there, the second wave could handle a much greater part of the kinds of things we want AI for. But it's really the third wave, it's artificial general intelligence, that's going to be able to do all of the things we want to do with AI. And just to kind of remind ourselves of why AI is so useful and so important in terms of helping us do things that we want to do in life, is, first of all, it's significantly cheaper than human labor, which is often a constraint. I mean, the companies I've run, the biggest expense is always labor. That's the constraint. If the cost of labor was lower, we would be able to do more. So AI can reduce the cost of getting things done. AIs can communicate with each other much better. So if one AI discovers something in research or develops something, that can be copied that can be shared with other AI. They also don't have egos that get in the way, or political kind of motivations within a company that, oh no, I'm not going to share this information with anyone else, because I want to protect my job. So communication is so much easier. They work 24/7 without interruptions, distractions, and whatever. They also don't have certain distractions that we humans tend to have, which can be quite severe. They have perfect memory. They have photographic memory. They have access to all the information in the world potentially instantaneously, internet. And their reasoning ability to reason, to think clearly, is much, much better than ours. Evolution didn't optimize us for rational thinking. We have to work at it. So, looking forward to what we hope and expect to be able to use AGI for. One of the things is what we call a personal assistant. Actually, we've trademarked that particular thing, and hopefully we'll be able to bring this to people soon. But why we call it a personal, it should be called personal, is three different meanings of personal that are really important. The one, it should belong to you. It shouldn't belong to some mega corporation. It should be yours. You should control it. The second... Yeah, because right now we're getting them for free, but we're selling our soul. So you should own it. It should be yours. Secondly, it should be customized to you. It should be personalized to you. It should know what you want, your history, your goals, and learn that, remember it, and use it. And thirdly, it should be private. You should be able to determine what it shares with whom. It should be your data and your privacy. So that's really what I strongly believe in, what we need. And one of the things you can also see, if you think about the future, right now we are dealing with Amazon, we're dealing with Apple, we're dealing with Google, we're dealing with Microsoft, or whatever, We have to deal directly with each of these chatbots, with our airline, with our bank, with our whatever. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't scale. If we go on vacation, if we have a child or whatever, we have to tell each of these services separately. And they are not working for us. They are not programmed to meet our agenda. It's the corporation's agenda. Amazon isn't going to tell you that there's a sale at Walmart, Or your iPhone isn't going to tell you that maybe Samsung has a really neat new device or something, So they don't serve your agenda, and you have to tell each one separately. So it really makes no sense. What we need our own personal assistant that can deal with all of these other things and decide what adverts you actually might be interested in, what information you want to share, and so on. So we also call that an exocortex. It becomes an extension of your brain, of your mind. And in fact, it's one of the ways I see it as the main way for us to also extend our intelligence. Because having this psychologically closely coupled personal assistant or exocortex, it'll become part of us. It'll be like an extra limb, but it'll be a cognitive limb. It will really encompass us and improve our intelligence. So finally, looking sort of really forward to the future of what AGI can do for us, imagine just food and clean water and energy becoming a lot cheaper, radical abundance that we will get by dramatically dropping the cost of production. For us, more importantly, to cure diseases and reverse aging, to help us do the research. Imagine having, a PhD level researcher in aging research, and that knowledge can be copied 1 million times, so you can have 1 million of them chipping away at the problem. We'll make progress much, much quicker. These problems are hard. You know, I mean, Bill is going to tell us about some fantastic advances happening, but in some ways they drop in the ocean to what we really need. There is a lot of work to be done, and unfortunately I'm not convinced that that work can be done quickly, quick enough to help many of us. We'll end up in the dewar, and that's the second worst thing that can happen to us. For those of you who are not signed up for Cryonics, the worst thing that can happen to you is not be ending up in the dewar. So I think having PhD level researchers at scale will be tremendously valuable. I also see that our social systems are a real mess. Politicians, political systems. We need more intelligence brought to this to help us manage ourselves, manage our affairs. And again, AGI can help. It's rationality, it's being impartial, it doesn't have an ego. I mean, the worst people become politicians, you know. People who, it's a filter. You know, I don't know if there are any politicians, but it's a strong conviction I have. You know, there's a filter for you to be able to make it through that. You have to be a certain kind of person. To help restore the environment, to help us with global warming, with energy and all of those things. Or in a nutshell, for many of us as chronicists, it's to solve cryonics, and anti-aging. So I've dedicated my life to that. I couldn't think of anything I'd rather be doing anyway, so it's not a burden on me. It's a huge challenge. It's tremendously exciting, but I also see of how much value that can be to have this personal assistant, this little angel on our shoulder that can help us make better decisions, to steer us away from some of the stupid things that we might otherwise do, to increase our intelligence, and to help us solve so many problems that we have. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Peter Voss, we're so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming all the way over here.
Thanks for having me.
I know there's got to be a question or two out there, so we do have time for a few questions. And those of you who have been here before know that we always have a different way of doing this. So today, I'm going to ask you to ask the question, and I'm going to repeat it. So I'm going to call on you. Go ahead. As loud as you, just to me, and then I'm going to repeat it for the people online, because there are people in Australia, in Canada, and over in Europe that are wanting to hear the question. Go ahead. Not a story, a question, please. Yes. Okay. So many years ago, his brother worked in IBM on artificial intelligence. He said when we were to reach a certain speed, that we could be on one side of the wall and talk to the machine. We will know that it's a machine. What's your question? How far are we away? Good.
Yeah. So
how far are we away from being able to do that?
Yeah. So how far away are we from something that has human-level intelligence? Whether you could tell, that's a different. There's kind of the debate on. It's called the Turing test, basically, whether you can fool somebody into believing that's a human when it's really a machine. I don't actually believe that's a very good way of addressing it, because you don't want to build a machine that is designed to fool humans. However, in the general sort of gist of things, yes, when will we have machines that have human-level general intelligence? Now, the way I usually answer that question is, to me, it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of money. Now, of course, that's from my perspective. There is so little money going into AGI research. As I said, all the oxygen has been sucked out of the air. Everything is going into deep learning, machine learning. That's where the action is. So given enough funds and having the right teams work on it with the right ideas, because you have to have the right theory, you have to understand what intelligence is, I believe it could be as soon as 7 years.
As soon as 7 years, cool. Question here.
Do you have your own
Do you have your own beta version, personal
Yeah,
system?
we keep breaking Aigo to make it smarter and in the process make it dumber and other things. So we are just in the process of commercializing the second generation of our technology. You know, the first generation already in the call center, but now we have a much smarter version. But there's a difference between having a development prototype that you're working on and having a commercially robust system. So we're right now in the process of having a robust system.
Edmund, question. Go ahead. How do you propose to keep it from getting carried away with itself, Peter?
Right. So, yeah, I assume you mean here that it will have its own agenda that is at cross purposes with our agenda. So I think, the problem is we are all primed with, movies, those Hollywood stories about AI going rogue and so on. So that's kind of the natural thing for us to believe that that's likely to happen. We have a lot of, even some luminaries like Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk say that AI is so dangerous. For reasons I don't have really time to go into, I believe they're very mistaken. But let me just say that inherently an AI will not have the reptile brain that we have, that has the sort of drive of ego and reproduction. I mean, we started off basically raping and pillaging, and that's sort of still deeply embedded in our psyche, and it's sort of civilization and rationality that keeps us from acting in that way. An AI isn't going to have those kind of emotions. It wasn't designed by evolution for reproduction and survival. So it's not going to have that inherent drive or instinct to want to take over the world or to dominate or to be the best. And the other argument that people often, or the other concern that people voice, is they say, what if the AI doesn't really understand what we want? What if we program it to do a certain thing and it misunderstands that and then it does something stupid? And again, this has been popularized quite a bit. Some of you may be aware of it with the paperclip problem or the alignment problem. That's sort of the more technical way of talking about it. And the problem is that argument is completely flawed. You are then assuming that you have a system that is so smart that it can take over the world, can defeat all other AIs, it can defeat human intelligence, and yet it's stupid enough not to understand or ask you to clarify what you actually wanted to do. So, I think it's unfortunate that a lot of these people promoting those views of scary AI have got a lot of funding and they have a loud voice, but actually their arguments generally don't stand up to scrutiny. But I would like to, not to just give a one-sided view in terms of what if they get out of hand, basically. In my view, and I have written articles, by the way, you can find my articles on medium.com, just my name, medium.com. I have a lot of articles on philosophy, on ethics, on Turing test, on AGI, and so on. But not to just give a one-sided view, I believe AGI will cause tremendous, significant disruption in people's lives. It's going to lead to massive unemployment, but it will also lead at the same time to massive abundance. So people have to basically get used to the idea that, A, they don't have to work anymore, which is like a dream, but often maybe you don't want to get what you wish for. That a lot of people will struggle to not have that career, to not have that need, to not have to work. And there is going to be very significant disruption in how people's lives work, but I don't see much risk at all, if any, of rogue AI, of an AI wanting to take over the world or kill humans. I just don't see that. I don't think the facts kind of support that.
I'd have to agree with you, Peter. You know, you see so much coming out of Hollywood and the video games and all the violence, and they're using violence to sell movies and video games. And there are many people here that may become filmmakers or video game makers. And I encourage you to go a more peaceful path. It's just, I think, the future for us. And I appreciate your insight on that. We have a question here.
That's a two-part question. The first part is, what is the product or way to see the second generation AI being deployed in the marketplace? And Alexa.
I'll tell you what, why don't you come over here? I'm going to let you talk on the microphone to everybody all over the world. I think that'd be a good idea. Whoa! Sorry, Elaine. Ask that question to the internet as well. They can hear you.
So the two-part question is, what do you see this second generation AGI being deployed into the market? What does that look like? Is it an Alexa type system?
I'll give you a little bit of a longer answer there. So the original plan was for us to continue doing enterprise work, similar like call center, do an enterprise. And then a year and a half ago, two of my friends raised amazing amounts of money on ICOs. We tried to do an ICO to build, to basically to deliver a personal assistant, an exocortex, to basically build a community of people who would teach Aigo different skills. So like Wikipedia, where you have domain experts that put knowledge into Wikipedia, you would have domain experts teaching Aigo different skills, and they would then be paid with Aigo tokens. Now, as it turned out, the whole ICO market went bad, and what we found out is that a lot of crooks in the game and so on. Anyway, we spent $600,000 and 8 or 9 months pursuing that road. And that would have been directly to the consumer to have a personal assistant, which is, my big dream to make that happen. But it's very difficult otherwise without sort of the ICO community doing that. So later last year, we decided to go back to the enterprise play. So we are now talking to companies that have tried to use IBM Watson and failed. We have one very large company, for example. They spent 2 years implementing IBM Watson, and it failed. They threw it out, trying to do a conversational agent. So that's what we're aiming is to license our technology and integrate it into companies to help them give personalized service to their customers.
Awesome. And then what do you think of Colossus, the movie from the 50s? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I'm just sort of trying to sort of remember the punchline.
Yeah, so basically the military builds an AI and it forces peace on the planet. It doesn't force like a destruction, but it like makes everybody stop basically. It actively takes over, but
in fact I was invited by one of the top Hollywood producers as an advisor for a remake of Colossus that they wanted to do. And it was actually quite interesting. It was exciting. I loved doing it. And I spoke to them, but then they gave me the script and they asked me for technical advice and so on. And then I saw the way the script was going. The AI was going to be bad again and take over the world. And I said, can't you change it so that this has a happy ending, that the AI will actually, benefit humanity and we'll merge with it and so on. And well, anyway, they didn't go ahead with the project. They certainly didn't take my ideas, but they also didn't go ahead with that project.
You got to try. We have time for one more question. I believe there was one. Yes, right here. Free hugs. You're not shy. Come on over. I spent the evening with this young man, and this is one bright young man.
Thank you, Neil. I'm curious about Aigo's ontology you mentioned. You said it has a very small ontology, and then I guess it learns from there new facts. I'm curious, both just more details about how that works, and do you see parallels between that and the expert systems or logic programming of the first wave of AI?
Yeah. So do I see parallels with expert systems? That's very difficult to kind of give a yes or no answer. if you, like I mentioned right now, in terms of our Aigo token ecosystem, we would have had domain expert teach Aigo different things. So in that sense, getting the expertise of humans into the AI, yes, it's the same. But the way it's done, it's very differently. Expert systems, somebody listens to the expert, and then they translate it into code, into a flowchart, and turn it into code. Whereas with our system, the expert would teach Aigo in natural language. In fact, there's a kind of a remarkable thing that reflects this difference in philosophy. We have, let's say out of 10 people we employ, 7 of them are not programmers, they're not data scientists, they are what we call AI psychologists. It's a profession I invented, but they're basically linguists and cognitive psychologists. So they figure out how they can teach Aigo that knowledge and the skills that are required. So we try to do as little as possible in code, because what you put in code is fixed, it can't be changed. What you teach, the system can adapt and learn. So, those are sort of the similarities and differences. You had a first part of the question? Oh, I probably should do that offline, but yes, we have a core of an ontology that already knows about people and places and relationships and has sort of the core knowledge that's needed for, that's needed for all applications. But then we teach it the additional knowledge that it requires for any given domain. Okay. Anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Voss. All right, so we're going to have Peter Voss around perhaps for you to be able to talk to. We're going to coordinate that. We'll see how we can arrange that. I'm not sure, but we're going to go to work on that right in a moment. And now let's bring up the founder of Perpetual Life, Mr. Bill Faloon.
I thought it was fascinating that Peter brought up the concept of Google and iPhones and Amazon as being an inconvenient issue. I thought that was kind of fascinating because we realize how efficient they have made our lives. And yet you just saw someone talking about the fact we're just going to get rid of all that and make your life much more easy to contend with. My talk tonight, by the way, deals with something that a lot of people don't have an understanding of, and that's okay. For those who don't know all about me, I am a licensed Florida funeral director and embalmer. Took me 5 years of education to get my mortuary science degree and to perform all of my internship so that I'm fully accredited to embalm a dead body, to inter a dead body, disinter a dead body. And the title of the talk, I actually came up with it while Peter was talking and texted it to the people in the room back there so we could have a title. And the title is, Are We Burying People Alive Today? And burying, by the way, you can substitute the word cremating. Are we declaring them dead? Are we refrigerating them? Are we embalming them, autopsying them while they're still alive? And alive, that has synonyms that relate to the word resuscitatable, meaning are we taking people who could be brought back to life and instead writing them off, burying them, cremating them, taking away any opportunity they have to be resuscitated? And the answer is, well, we've been doing that for thousands of years. I mean, cardiopulmonary resuscitation techniques were discovered a couple thousand years ago. They were perfected a couple hundred years ago, and it wasn't really till the 1960s where it became routine medical practice. And that meant people whose heart had stopped beating were embalmed, buried, autopsied. They were destroyed simply because people did not pay attention to technology that was right before their eyes. It was in the historic record, and they just weren't paying attention to it. Now, a contention that we have long espoused in the cryonics community is that while there are people who do die today without any technology available to resuscitate them, that won't always be the case. Technology, as it evolves, will eventually find cures for virtually every disease that we know of today. It will find ways to repair our cellular structures in such a way that even if there's damage inflicted during the cryopreservation process, we may very well be able to resuscitate them in a similar way that we do when a person has a sudden heart attack or even when they suffer a stroke. Just over the last 3 or 4 years, they've been able to improve stroke therapy in ER rooms, and we introduced that technology in this church a number of years ago. It's called an endovascular thrombectomy. It's the mechanical removal of a blood clot that lodges in the brain. And they used to just write these people off as being brain dead forever, when in reality, if they use a mechanical retrieval clot device that takes that clot out of the cerebral artery, those people restore full functionality up to 24 hours after an ischemic stroke. And what we emphasize at this church is find out what hospital nearest you is thrombectomy capable. In other words, which hospital is able to have the doctors there on the premises to remove a clot that's lodged in your brain so that you don't wind up being buried or cremated or embalmed or refrigerated before you need to be. It's important to know that information. And what we talked about a couple years ago is now conventional practice. Problem is they don't have enough experts at enough hospitals, so we recommend people identify the closest thrombectomy capable hospital to you in case you develop stroke symptoms. That's where you want to go. So we're going to talk about the fact that we don't know at this point how to define brain death. Typical physician will tell you 5 or 6 minutes after complete cessation of blood flow to your brain cells die and they're irreversibly dead. Now, a lot of that has to do with temperature. At room temperature, with no other intervention, for the most part, we can't retrieve those brain cells after that 5 or 6 minute cessation of oxygenated blood. Now, if you lower the temperature, you buy yourself a lot of time. And early research that were done at Cryonics laboratories were able to show that in dogs, you could lower their temperature and get them back after 6 hours, maybe even more, with full cognitive function. And even at warm ischemia, when you perfused them with certain antioxidants and other nutrients ahead of time, you were able to get them back after an hour of warm ischemia, meaning room temperature, they still were bringing those brains back. Well, the problem with those early researchers is they didn't publish the information. And as a result, very few people knew it existed. They didn't understand that brain cells were far more resilient than what we now know. Well, a breakthrough was announced just a couple weeks ago. It made worldwide headlines. The fact of the matter is, in a group of pigs, and the research were at Yale, they took a group of severed pig heads, room temperature, warm ischemia, and after 4 hours, they were able to restore partial neuronal activity in these pig brains that were dead for 4 hours. This, they believe, has now redefined what brain death really represents. This is the Wall Street Journal, but this wound up being published around the world, headline news, and if you missed it, that's okay. There's a lot of news out there. You can't possibly keep up with it all. I happen to be in a community that when something like this is announced, I wind up having 10 or 20 people sending me different articles, and these articles were appearing all around the world in the most prestigious publications out there, that the idea that a brain is dead, it's now changed. It's somewhere between that 5 and 6 minutes and maybe 4 hours when a person theoretically could be resuscitatable. And as it relates to cryonics, well, if you're cryopreserved at a temperature below 300 degrees Fahrenheit, there's no more decomposition, no deterioration. You literally have forever for them to develop the technology to restore neuronal function in your brain. But this technology, again, shattered beliefs. No one believed this would really happen. We actually discovered it at Cryonics labs in the late 1970s that these brain cells lasted a lot longer than what people thought, except no one did the research with the kind of prestige that the Yale University researchers had. And when you have that kind of prestige, the media pays attention. So every major news source just a little bit over a month ago was talking about the fact that we now have redefined what brain cell death really is. And what we've redefined it as, we don't really know. We don't really know how long those brains are going to remain resuscitatable. And because we don't know, I choose to be cryopreserved when I die. because I'm going to hopefully garner the benefits of limitless technology in the future. And since there is no molecular motion whatsoever at liquid nitrogen temperature, I have forever to wait. And the cryonics organizations have made plans to make sure that the money is there to keep me cryopreserved. So again, what we thought was impossible just a little bit over a month ago was proven possible. You can restore partial neuronal activity, not the full one, partial neuronal activity in the brains of pigs, head severed, 4-hour delay, and they were able to restore functionality. This is huge. It's an outrageous breakthrough. The media went berserk over it, and we're grateful to be able to say, hey, it just coincidentally, literally coincidentally, we have this event where 54 young cryonicists came to town for our annual Teens and 20s Scientific Symposium, where we discuss and we present findings that most people don't know about yet on how to not die, because none of us want to die. Cryonics always is plan B. Plan A is stay alive, stay healthy. But if that fails, we'll at least be able to take advantage of future technology. This was the 10th annual Teens and 20s event, by the way, and the people who come in are just all 100% brilliant, ahead of their time. They're doing things for themselves to avoid aging that a lot of us older people, and that includes me, I'm 64, they do more than what I'm doing sometimes to not grow old and not suffer the consequences. Now this is a really neat slide. It shows an animation of the restoration of neuronal activity in the severed pig brain heads. This is after 4 hours, and I look at this and I think, wow, that could be me coming back to life in the future. Perhaps a 4-hour window would be there between the time I'm cryopreserved and I die, but that may not be too long. And the way we set our structure up, we try to cryopreserve people immediately upon death so that there is no window whatsoever. But when I saw this slide published in the Los Angeles Times on how the neuronal structure was restored, I thought, wow, I'm seeing it before my eyes. Now, this is the Wall Street Journal diagram of how they were able to restore health to these dead pig brains, restore at least partial neuronal activity. And these diagrams are very similar to what people were publishing in the cryonics community. These are basically schematic diagrams of the different perfusates, the filters, the nutrient, the oxygenation systems. This is eerily familiar, and I say eerily familiar because I'm talking about something that was done in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and it gets published in 2019. It makes international headlines. But this was already being done 30, 40 years ago, and I'm going to at some point get those old cryonics magazines and compare them to what you're seeing on the screen, because what you're going to see is what the world thought was the first time ever that brains after 4 hours had been partially resuscitated. Well, we were doing it after 6 hours of very cold ischemia, and we got the dogs back to completely normal status. And they, in fact, they had all the same personalities, they had their memories, there was no loss of function. So, another topic. Elon Musk, he's a big fan of AI, though sometimes he's one of those people a little pessimistic about it as far as it being too powerful, but I don't agree with him. I very much agree with Peter Voss. We will benefit from AI in a huge, huge way. But what Elon Musk is working on is merging our brain with the cloud, so that we no longer have to carry these ridiculous iPhones around. I mean, they're big and they're bulky, and they got to be recharged, and we got to push these buttons. Wouldn't it be better if we had the cell phone simply implanted into our brain? That would be a heck of a lot easier. But as it relates to people thinking, is that desirable? Is it possible? Let's look at someone who's rather successful in life. Steve Ballmer, CEO of Microsoft. I mean, that's a company that's touched all of our lives in a fantastic way. He's worth $47 billion. That's really a lot of money. I mean, he's up there in the top 10, 20 people of people's wealth, at least we know about. Very wealthy, Harvard graduate, CEO of Microsoft. While Microsoft went up as it did in value and prestige, what did he think about the iPhones? What did Steve Ballmer, one of the more brilliant people in the computer industry, what did he think of iPhones? Well, he's rather famous about this. This is what he thought about it. No chance. No one's going to want them. They're bulky. You got no keyboard, battery needs to be recharged every 8 hours. He just said, Microsoft, we have no interest in this because the consumers aren't going to want it. That was Steve Ballmer. Hey, one of the smartest people who I would think has existed, if you know what I mean, you could put him in there with all the brilliant people as far as making a lot of money and improving technology. So Steve Ballmer didn't think we would want iPhones. Is there anyone here, by the way, who does not have one? Anyone here? Okay, okay, 2 people, 3, okay, good. There's some people that, you know, don't adapt that quickly, and that's okay. So, that's okay. But what I'm going to present next, you may not accept either. And remember, Steve Ballmer didn't accept the iPhone, and again, we're not all on the same page. Nuno Martins attended the first Teens and 20s Immortality Conference in 2009, and he made a commitment to me. He was in a PhD school at that point. He also was running a successful business in Portugal, a very interesting individual, and he's working with us on a number of projects right now. Nuno Martins, PhD, he promised me he is going to figure out a way in his lifetime to reanimate cryopreserved people. A year ago, or less than a year ago, he cryopreserved his own father. Father died around the age of 58 of metastatic colon cancer. What's so frustrating about that disease is, just think about it. If you had a colonoscopy every 5 to 10 years, that wouldn't happen. And yet 50,000 Americans still die in this country because they don't bother to get a colonoscopy. A little hint, if you haven't done it, suggest you do it. Because once it's metastatic into your liver, you can live for maybe 3 years and then you can't treat it anymore. Nuno, nonetheless, is dedicated to reanimating people and integrating us into the cloud. He has received a tremendous amount of publicity because he's published some information that's going to allow all of the knowledge in the world, everything that's ever been printed, everything that people can even think about, because we're going to connect it to other people if we want to, all that information transferred into our brain on demand. We'll know everything. In other words, we'll be able to use it like we do with our individual consciousness, but we won't say stupid things anymore because we'll know what the facts are. We'll know the date, place, and time of every prior event, so we won't have to make these ridiculous problems. And here's my problem. Here's my problem. This is my apartment. It is filled with boxes of medical journals, scientific publications, articles I just ripped out of the newspaper. It's filled, and I want to read all this stuff, so I don't dare throw it away. But I'm never going to have the time to get to any of this stuff. This is my real apartment. It's why my wife won't let me live with her, really, because this is what I want to do. I don't want to throw anything away. But I know I'm never going to get to read everything in those boxes, and everything in there is important. It's there because when I first read it, I said, I can't forget this. Let me put this on top, and I'll get to it in an hour. And guess what? Something else got put on top of that. Something else on top of that. So this is not a prop. I just took a little iPhone camera and took pictures, and this is how I live. I want that information into my brain. So this information needs to go into Bill Faloon's brain. And a lot of you want to know what's in my brain. You want that information. You ask me a million questions. I'd like to just have you have total access to everything I know. And then I could keep on learning, and you could keep on learning, and we'd have that AI technology that Peter talked about. So what Nuno Martins has done is published a paper, and it made it into the frontiers of neurosciences about the potential of us in our lifetime, within the very near future, interacting with the cloud. Interfacing our brains with the cloud so that we'll be super smart, super efficient, we'll never be ignorant again. And this also garnered international publicity, international attention, that we're basically, in the near future, going to throw away these iPhones, and we're going to have implants in our brain that do exactly what iPhones do, except much more efficiently. It's going to happen, and it'll be rejected in the beginning, just like people did iPhones, and then people slowly accept it. What I'm just showing you are the reports in the media worldwide, and if you missed this, it's okay. There's that much new information coming out, which is another reason why we need this enhanced AI technology implanted into our brains so that we're able to know this stuff. We'll know it when we wake up. Everything that occurred the last 8 hours, it'll be right there. We don't have to go and pick up a newspaper or log onto our computer. It'll just be there, right into our brain. And the attention this is getting, this is what's so remarkable. The neuroscience community realizes this is the next Apple. Think about how much money Apple made because they didn't have Steve Ballmer as the CEO. Just think, if he worked for Apple, he'd say no one's going to buy that iPhone, don't even do it. But because Steve Ballmer worked for a different company, we have iPhones. But this is something that the neuroscientists and the investment community are realizing whoever perfects this is going to take over a big part of the world, and no one likes to be left behind. They don't want to miss out on the fact that this is going to make more money than perhaps any other technology that's ever been developed. So as a result, it's making media attention, and people are paying attention to it in the investment community. So I could go on and on with all these headlines, and I'm going to make this available so you can all see it anytime you want. It's really good material. And again, the Frontiers of Neuroscience is a very prestigious scientific journal. That's why it's gotten all this publicity. It's a peer-reviewed journal, and these scientists are on the verge of merging our brains with the cloud being all the computers throughout the world. I'm going to play a brief little clip, played on Russian TV, by the way, about this. It's one of the better ones out there.
Can you imagine technology that is so advanced it could provide you with instant access to the world's knowledge and artificial intelligence as soon as you think of a specific topic? According to a group of scientists from around the world, humanity could be just decades away from the unprecedented merge of human biology with advanced technology. This prediction is part of research published in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience. The study looked at the possibility of human-brain cloud interface and how it could be made possible by nanotechnology and artificial intelligence in the future. The scientists said it is conceivable that within the next 20 to 30 years, neural nano robotics may be developed to enable a safe, secure, instantaneous, real-time interface between the human brain and both biological and non-biological computing systems. This level of technology could include brain-to-brain interfaces, brain-to-computer interfaces, and specifically brain-to-cloud interfaces. Technology linking the brain to the cloud could drastically alter the state of communications between humans and machines. So in order for this to become possible, the study noted that data transfer between living human brains and the cloud would likely require the use of supercomputers with artificial intelligence algorithms. While they say that there are supercomputers with processing speeds fast enough to handle the necessary volumes of data right now, they still have to create tiny devices that would be embedded deep in the brain. The senior author of the study noted that once inside the brain, the devices would then wirelessly transmit encoded information to and from a cloud-based supercomputer network for real-time brain state monitoring and data extraction. Such a breakthrough in technology has the power to transform communications, education, work, and the world as we know it. But with the requirement of tiny devices being inserted into your brain in order to access the cloud, it remains to be seen just how many people will be willing to participate. In Washington, Rachel Blevins, RT.
Now, to give you an idea about how much excitement this published study generated, the Frontiers of Neurosciences, it has a lot of medical journals. It's got a huge number of them, but more than 90% of all the views of all the Frontiers in Sciences journals were this study. There was hundreds and hundreds of other published studies that were ignored because none of them had the potential to revolutionize every single aspect of our life and make more money than this. So you've got people in Silicon Valley saying, wow, this, if it comes into being, it just blows away everything else. I mean, not just your iPhones, your computers, all the technology that we currently think is great. Well, this just blows it out of the water. We have it implanted into our brains, and we're there. And once you see people with it in their brains, you're going to want that same technology. You're going to feel, frankly, left behind if you don't have it. So I always like to conclude my talks by people who maybe could have done something with a lot of money, and they didn't do it. Now, Mr. Allen here, he's a co-founder of Microsoft. He did donate a lot of money to medical research, but not enough, didn't make it his priority. He died. I believe he was cremated. That's ridiculous, $20 billion, and you die of a common disease. And I say that, and I only have a little bit more time. There are better ways to treat most diseases than what conventional medicine is able to do. It doesn't mean you ignore conventional medicine, but if your doctors say, we can't do anything more, well, you ought to look in other ways, other directions, other places, and the internet lets you do that quite a bit. But if you've got $20 billion, you should be running full-page ads in a Wall Street Journal, asking people to come forward with what they're doing, and hire a team of PhDs to evaluate it, because I'm almost certain he could be alive right now if he affirmatively hired people and put out advertisements saying, we'll pay you money if you've got something that's going to work. Didn't do it. He's dead. He's cremated. He's gone. I have sympathy for that. I think people ought to be considering other ways to handle their life. Benjamin Franklin, if you ever read a history about him, he did a lot more than just fly a kite and show some electricity coming out of the sky. He set up the post office, discovered the Gulf Stream, enabled our country to win a war, liberated us. Nonetheless, he is quoted in a letter as saying he really wanted to see the future. He knew technology would emerge. He knew this country was going to grow into something spectacular, and he also knew he wasn't going to live very much longer. He wanted to be preserved and then brought back to life in the future to enjoy what was going to happen. But he knew the methods of preservation even weren't going to keep his body intact. Cryonics didn't exist for Benjamin Franklin. It really was only since 1900 that they've had dewars and the ability to have liquid nitrogen available to preserve people. For those who are interested, it's easy to do. There's a group called Alcor, a group called the Cryonics Institute. There are groups forming now that are even preserving brains at even lower costs. It's all out there on the internet. Just Google Cryonics and read all about it. If you want to sign up, prices are getting very reasonable. It's still expensive with Alcor, but there's other groups don't charge much at all. And that is my presentation for this Sunday.
And then we can do a Q&A with the rest of the people?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, so logistically, I have a situation where I need your assistance, all of you. It is 4:30 or 4:28, and only just the cryonicists, the young cryonicists. Everyone else, please stay, because we need to get them to their airplanes. Otherwise, they're going to miss going to Canada and Belgium and Singapore and wherever they're going. So just you all, young teens to 20s, we're going to excuse you now. Karen is going to lead you into the bus. And I appreciate your cooperation, regular folks, and those of you who come here all the time, my good friends. And as soon as they have left, we're going to do a short Q&A. So we're going to change of plans.
Okay, group. All these people, by the way, some flew in. Okay, group. Just so you know, those young people getting off the church and into the bus, they've flown in from around the world. Some of them from countries like Russia, Europe, Asia. They've come in from around the world, around the country, to gather for this weekend. It started Friday night, and we've been interacting, exchanging information, and that's how we're able to stay ahead of conventional people. And I want to spend the next couple hours with them on the bus and back at the hotel. So for any questions, you're just welcome to ask me at any future service. I try to make myself available to as many people as I can, but I'm going to go with those young people because they're not going to be around in South Florida after the next couple hours, and most of you will be. So thank you for coming, and look forward to the next service.
All right. Well, amazing presentation today. I know that there's more than one of you that doesn't want to have those things put in their brains. I can tell, because I've been talking to a couple of you, and you say, no, I don't want to do that. I'd rather just watch the movie instead of be in the virtual movie. This is, I think, a glimpse into the future. What we have seen today with Peter Voss and with the presentation by Bill Faloon, just amazing things. So we now want to bring up our musician again, and we're blessed to have her here. So stand with me, stay with me, bear with me for just a couple of more minutes. And I bet there are some questions that you may have that I may even have the answer to. Are there any questions on artificial general intelligence or all of the stuff that Bill just talked about? Yeah. Okay, a question. So do we see an army of neurosurgeons that will be doing this? I suspect, sir, that what we're going to see is this is going to not come charging through the door, but it's going to appear here and there and here and there all around the world. I've seen laboratories in China that are phenomenally amazing. I've seen things, reports from Europe, that things that are happening that are incredible. I suggest that if our country doesn't get going and going quickly, we're going to be left in the dust. And these operations, these things will be occurring in other places very rapidly. So is it going to be robotic surgery that's going to happen? I don't know. I don't know. Is it going to be super smart surgeons with an army of people that are following them? Probably more like that. Something like what you see with George Church from Harvard, who is really spearheading the age reversal movement, who has said in 5 years, if he has the sufficient research funds, he can reverse aging in the next 5 years. Right now, we're doing that here, though, aren't we? We're doing that with the calorie restrictions, with all of the things that Bill has been talking about over the past few months, over the past year. We've been here now. We're going on our 6th year. And 6 years ago, I was struggling to get information to be able to get to our members for what was going on. It was hard to find. Now there's so much. Before I would send one email, and sometimes I had something good to say, and something I'd just say, come to the church and hear what we're going to listen to what we have to say. But now I'm sending out, you're getting who's getting my newsletters? You're getting newsletters more than once a month. And there are news flashes that are just so important that I've got to put them out there. And we're working on a more efficient way of doing that, by the way. But it's incredible the speed at which technology and age reversal is coming that, in my opinion, it will be quite well accepted within the next couple of years, if it's not already. And that's where I see that going. Excellent. There's a question way in the back. He says we may not need surgery to do this. Instead, there are wearable devices. Yes, tremendous advances. Look at the new Apple Watch. If you before you used to push the button, if you fall down, I can't get up, and you push the button. You don't have to push the button anymore with that new Apple Watch. I am told that if you wear this Apple Watch, it is monitoring, this one right there, it's monitoring your heart, and if your heart ceases, it contacts your paramedic, it contacts your next of kin, it contacts everybody, it contacts your neighbor, so that all of a sudden maybe you don't have to die. This new Apple Watch is amazing, and it's the tip of the iceberg. I know there are other things in the works that are going to be, and possibly the next generation of Apple Watches is even going to be more incredible, where it's not only following your pulse, maybe it's following your respiration, maybe it's following all kinds of incredible changes in your body temperature, that type of thing. And these are things, what's an Apple Watch cost? Under $500, isn't it? $500, there you go. So, okay, all these going once, going twice? No. Elaine's talking about the fact that I am an auctioneer in another life. That's how I put bread on the table, but this is where my passion is. All right, so before we get any, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, who'd like to hear another rendition by Elaine Silver, the Fairy Elaine?
Well, I did want to acknowledge that yesterday we had a blue moon. Do you know that we had a blue moon yesterday? And I'm a priestess, so I wanted to just tell you a little bit about the blue moon. It's a rare moon. No, I got it. It's a rare moon, and usually it's when you have 2 full moons in 1 month. But this year, this spring, we had 4 full moons in the season of, or we will have 4 full moons in the season of the spring. And usually there's only 3 full moons in a season. So I had assumed that the 4th full moon would be considered the blue moon. But the 4th full moon is called the late moon or the last moon. And the 3rd full moon, when there's 4 in a season, is called the blue moon. And we had that last night. It was actually full at 5:11 yesterday. And so I wanted to share a song with you about calling on the power of the moon and using some of the universal law of using our mind to steer the law to have manifest things that we want to have. So on the full moon, once it's full and it begins to wane, it's a perfect time to think about what no longer serves us and what we would like to release. And it goes like this. Call on the moon when she is round, luck with you shall then abound. what you wish it will be found in sky, in sea, or solid ground. Call on the moon when she is round. Luck with you shall then abound. What you wish it will be found in sky, in sea, or solid ground. In sky, in sea, or solid ground. In sky, in sea, or solid ground. Now, each one here can do this. We can declare and affirm our intentions. I declare on this powerful night the highest good of all. I declare in this moonlit sight the answer to my call. Trusting now the mind's free will, knowing how desires are filled. Shooting stars I have seen above, into my heart they're sending love. Yes, we can use the energy of a shooting star. When you see a shooting star, you can make a wish, and that's a desire. I declare on this powerful night the highest good of all. I declare in this moonlit sight the answer to my call. Grateful for this blessed grace. What went before has been replaced. I let go to be released. I retreat in bliss and peace. I declare on this powerful night the highest good of all. I declare in this moonlit sight the answer to my call. The answer to my call. The answer to my call on the moon when she is round. Luck with you shall then abound. What you wish it will be found in sky, in sea, or solid ground. In sky, in sea, or solid ground. In sky, in sea, or solid ground. Okay. You know, we're having all this artificial intelligence and going into the cloud, and I just thought it would be nice to get a little grounded with some earth-based spirituality and philosophy. So I'm just going to do one more song, and it's got to be Forever Young again. That's what I was told to do. So here we go. May the good Lord be with you down every road you roam. And may sunshine and happiness surround you when you're far from home. And may you grow to be proud, dignified and true. And do unto others as you'd have done to you. Be courageous and be brave, and in my heart you'll always stay. Forever young, forever young, forever young, forever young. May good fortune be with you, may your guiding light be strong. serve you well. For all the wisdom of a lifetime, no one can ever tell. Except artificial intelligence. TMI. Of whatever road you choose, I'm right behind you, win or lose. Forever young, 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 forever young. Forever young. Forever young. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. I know the food is going to be fantastic. Enjoy it. Okay.